Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Another child abuse case rocks Hong Kong, with a carer accused of pushing toddlers. Hong Kong's last sawmill is sealed off before making way for development. And a state funeral is held for Japan's assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A woman at a childcare home has been arrested and accused of ill-treating 6 toddlers. It's the second case of child abuse at homes for young children since December. A carer has been arrested and suspended from duty after she was accused of shoving as many as 6 children at a residential home run by the Po-Leung Kuk charity in Causeway Bay. Her actions were captured by a social welfare department surveillance camera during a regular inspection earlier this month. The video footage showed the 33-year-old woman pushing a 2-year-old toddler down on a playmat inappropriately and rudely several times. By tracing video recordings of that day, the Po-Leung Kuk found that 5 other children were treated in the same manner. Police were then informed. The carer was arrested on suspicion of improperly treating 3 boys and 3 girls, aged between 1 and 3. Commission on Children member Priscilla Low said organizations should report earlier if abusive acts are severe and frequent. Chief Executive John Lee vowed to follow up on the matter seriously.
We are already trying to amend the relevant legislation. I hope we can expand the scope of inspections. For instance, we may have independent and trusted bodies in order to boost our capacity of regular inspections.
The Causeway Bay home is one of only 2 non-governmental facilities in the city that accommodate children aged below 3. The other home, the Hong Kong Society for the Protection of Children in Prince Edward, was at the center of a child abuse scandal earlier, with 34 members of staff arrested. The High Court has sentenced the man to 5.5 years in jail for helping his parents take their own lives. Lau Ka-wai, who's 43, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of aiding, abetting, counseling, and procuring the suicide of others. His parents fell to their deaths in Yuen Long in February last year because of financial problems. The court heard that Lau couldn't pluck up the courage to follow suit. Judge Johnny Chen said the defendant didn't show sorrow over his parents' death, but kept asking for a lenient sentence in the mitigation letter he wrote. The defense said the first place Lau plans to visit on his release is his parents' graves. The judge took Lau's guilty plea and his clean record into account when passing sentence. Time is running out for Hong Kong's last sawmill. Authorities have sealed off the yard in Sheungshou and want the owner to vacate the site to make way for the Northern Metropolis project. Macy Mok reports.
Dozens of workers from the Lands Department set up barriers around Cheeky Sawmill and Timber at Kwu Tung North this morning. They also sealed off the covered area of Hong Kong's last sawmill, as government staff blocked entry to the yard. The 75-year-old sawmill had been ordered to vacate the site by September the 13th to make way for the Northern Metropolis project. 2 weeks after the deadline, the owner Wong Hong Kun is asking for another extension. The Lands Department has already extended the deadline twice. The Development Bureau earlier ruled out a further extension, and the government will offer Wong $14 million as compensation. But he has yet to receive the money. Wong wants another 2 weeks to remove 700 tons of logs and machines. He said he would like to donate several items such as desks and wood to a university for woodwork education. However, Wong was barred entry to his sawmill to recover his possessions. He hopes he can get back his sign and pass it down to the next generation. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Hong Kong has registered its lowest number of COVID cases in more than 2 months. There were 3,667 new infections, of which 193 were imported on the day hotel quarantine ended. Among the non-local cases, 173 were detected through nucleic acid tests and 20 via rapid antigen tests. 6 more deaths were reported. Hospitals admitted 183 COVID patients, taking the tally to 1,966, with 13 in intensive care. The business sector has called for a further easing of anti-epidemic measures, but their hopes are slim after the city's leader complained that failure to comply with the remaining restrictions could lead to a rebound in cases, Jen Slow reports.
The scrapping of hotel quarantine is seen as a major step for the city to reconnect with the rest of the world. But some consider it's not enough to revitalize the economy. The Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce welcomed the initiative as it has attracted more business people to visit the city. But the chamber is lukewarm about the 3-day medical surveillance, which bars those with an amber code from premises like restaurants. Chamber Chief Executive George Leung said that could affect attendance for conferences and large-scale events. Many in the business community have instead gone to restriction-free countries such as Singapore, and events have also been relocated. But Leung's hopes for a 0+0 arrangement to be implemented soon are slim. The city's leader has complained about cases of non-compliance, including the issuance of fake medical certificates and people not observing isolation rules.
The success of the 0+3 plan will not be as effective because there may be a rebound of cases simply because of people's not complying with what they are required to do. We have to condemn this non-compliance because it affects every one of us.
Lee added that a COVID resurgence will delay a return to full normality. Finance Chief Paul Chan, meanwhile, said COVID has hampered efforts to attract and retain talent, but is confident that the situation will improve as Hong Kong opens up again. Janice Low, HKIBC.
Another doctor has been arrested for issuing fake medical certificates. The 65-year-old man was detained this morning at a clinic in Mong Kok on suspicion of issuing over 3,000 false COVID vaccine exemption certificates. He is alleged to have charged up to $5,000 for each certificate. So far, 7 doctors have been arrested in connection with the scam. The government said the certificates they issued will not be recognized. Overseas, world leaders have joined people in Japan to bid a final farewell to the assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A state funeral was held for Japan's longest-serving prime minister, but many Japanese were appalled by the cost. Sachin Kafi reports.
A military band played at the state funeral in Tokyo for former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida led the mourners, followed by Abe's widow Akie, who carried a box containing his ashes. Military officers placed the box on the altar erected for the ceremony. The national anthem was played, followed by a moment of silence. A video tribute chronicling Abe's career was aired during the ceremony. In his eulogy, Kishida praised Abe for his courage and dedication. Crown Prince Akishino and Crown Princess Kiko represented the Japanese royal family. Among the foreign leaders paying tribute were US Vice President Kamala Harris and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. On the streets of the capital, thousands of people lined up to pay tribute. But the funeral did not unite Japan. Hundreds of others registered their opposition to a state funeral by staging a peaceful march. They said they considered the event was a waste of taxpayers' money, especially at a time of record inflation. The cost is estimated at $12 million US, compared with $8.5 million for the state funeral of Britain's Queen Elizabeth. Abe was Japan's longest-serving prime minister. He was assassinated in July by a gunman who had a grudge with the controversial Unification Church, which has links to some Japanese politicians. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Many people in Russia have continued to reject attempts to draft them into the army as Moscow escalated its war with Ukraine. A number of enlistment centers were set alight, and one was even shot at. Winna Wong reports.
Some in Russia have chosen extreme methods to avoid being called up into the army. This 25-year-old man in the Irkutsk region opened fire inside a drafting center while apparently shouting nobody wants to go to war. He was later detained and faces severe punishment. The head of the draft office was in hospital in critical condition. Elsewhere, others were seen ramming cars into and setting fires to their nearby enlistment offices. Protests also erupted in Dagestan, one of the nation's poorer regions. People have been rallying there since last weekend. Russian state television, meanwhile, showed reservists packing up and boarding buses across the country. Last week, the Kremlin announced it was aiming to add at least 300,000 troops to its forces in Ukraine. Most men from 18 to 65 years old are considered eligible for conscription, and many have tried to flee the country. In a recorded message, the head of Russia's Orthodox Church said soldiers who die on military duty will be forgiven for their sins. Patriarch Kirill also called for an early end to what he called a fratricidal war. Winna Wong, HKIBC.
The Hong Kong Monetary Authority has warned that borrowers, especially home buyers, might find it harder to repay loans.
But the reality is the property prices are coming down, edging down slowly. If you use rating evaluation statistics from the peak of September 2021, compared with now, property prices have come down by 5.5%, residential property prices. And also with interest rate going up at that level, then probably it could affect the economic activities as well. And also, therefore, the repayment ability of the borrowers might actually come under pressure.
Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index was up 5 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent down $2.40, Trucker Fund up 2 cents. AIA down 45 cents, Ping An down 85 cents. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euros at 7.57, pounds at 8.48, and Australian dollar at 5.09. Over to the UK market, FTSE 100 is up 20 points. The Bank of England has decided not to hold an emergency meeting to prop up the pound, but vowed to do whatever it takes to bring inflation down. Massive tax cuts paid for by borrowing were blamed for sterling's plunge to record lows, but experts are also concerned about differences over the rate of growth.
We have a Treasury and a Chancellor saying that the underlying growth rate in the economy should be 2.5%. But we have a reality where the underlying growth rate is 1.5%. And that tension has to be sorted out.
Sterling's plunge has alarmed businesses and ordinary people. A weaker pound makes imports more expensive, adding to the financial burden of Britons who already have to pay more for essential items because of runaway inflation. On to the weather now, mostly fine with a few occasional showers. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. Same conditions until the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Tuesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Thanks for watching. Good night.